Good evening. If you don't have me turned on. Hey. Hello? 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 Testing, 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 testing. Yeah. Testing, 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 testing one. Okay, I'm ready. Hello. Good evening. Good to see everybody. Hope you've had a great day. Um, um, quick announcement. Two things that three things. This coming Sunday, the 29th at 5 p.m., we're having our fall festival, and it is at the Sadmucky Mercantile out towards Paladura Canyon on the right before you drop off into the canyon. There will be taco truck. There will be a live, really fantastic bluegrass band. We're opening it up outside the church, trying to just for whoever shows up. It's a community deal. So we're working with the Sad Monkey Mercantile. So invite your friends and your neighbors, and it'd be a good time just to get to know some people and to have fun, listen to some good music, eat some tacos, and I don't know what else Caleb has planned, but it'll be a fun evening. That's next Sunday, or this coming Sunday at 5 o'clock. Also on November the 5th, Sunday at 5 o'clock, is that correct? Is the packing party for Operation Christmas Child. Anything specific you need to about that? Socks and underwear. Okay. We're ready to go. Okay, so check that. If you see something and you want to contribute stuff to that, feel free to do that. Then be here at 5 on Sunday. The tables will be set up. The stuff will be ready. The boxes are all put together. It's just a matter of packing and praying over the packages. So that'll be a fun evening. And then next Wednesday night, a week from tonight, that's the first Wednesday night, right, in November. So that's fellowship supper. So come and eat. And we're having something. And bring whatever you think goes with something. And we will have a fun time of food and fellowship. Any other announcements that I'm forgetting? Hudson House is tomorrow. At what time? 2:45 for the young at heart are going there. Okay. Anything else? Sweet. Ben, you want to open us in prayer? Amen. Tonight we're going to be in Genesis, the last lesson in the study guide. If you want a new study guide, Ben's got some he's handing out for the next quarter. Genesis chapter 6 and in chapter 7. So for the last couple weeks, we've been in Genesis, and we looked at the beginning, at the chapter 1, the creation. Last week we talked about the fall and the original sin that came upon us. And so tonight we're going to be probably one of the most well-known biblical narratives is dealing with Noah in chapter 6, Noah and the ark. Now, leading up to that, between where we left off in chapter 2, chapter 3 last week, when sin entered the picture, between that period of time, when Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, man began to populate the earth, and there's chapters 3, 4, and 5. You get to chapter 6. So in that short window, and understand Genesis is not a detail, it's an overall picture. In that window of time, sin became so rampant that man's mind was on evil continuously. Okay? So the population of the earth had shifted from Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden living in perfection. Sin enters in through their choice to disobey God. Their eyes were opened, their minds were made aware of good and evil has taken over. And so in this short window of time, you have the progression of humanity. And in Genesis chapter 6, it gives the generations it says, these are the generations of Noah. All of the generations before that, when you go back into 5, you can track all the way back. And you can go all the way back to Cain and Abel, and chapter 5 is Adam's descendants all the way to Noah. Tells you how many years they lived. And then something is interesting. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation, it says in verse 9. Noah walked with God. And Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. And this is how you are to make the length of the ark 300 cubits, the breadth 50 cubits, its height 50 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, your sons' wives with you. And every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds according to their kind, of the animals according to their kinds, every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind, 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also you shall also take with you every sort of food that is eaten and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Okay. There's a lot going on here. We've understood that sin is taken over, and I just want to make a side note, and then we'll discuss this. But we look at the world that we live in today, and the rampant sin and the evil, and we look at it and go, this has got to be the most evil generation ever. As a comparison, I can't imagine the kind of evil that was on the face of the earth in these 3 chapters in Genesis when God decided that he was going to destroy all flesh. So if we can imagine the amount of sin and violence and wickedness that we live in, can you even wrap your brain around the kind of sin, wicked, and violence that was on the earth in this period? I don't know. I want to liken us to think that what we see and call the worst ever, to quote another Bible verse, is there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing's changed. So this is the world that Noah lives in. Everybody around him. So God says, Noah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to flood the earth. I want you to build a boat. No, I've enjoyed a lot of different discussions over the years. What's the first thing that strikes you about this concept that God approaches Noah and says, I want you to build a boat, an ark? Had it ever flooded before? No. There were seas, right? Because God had separated those in the creation. We talked about that when we were dealing with Genesis chapter 1. So there were bodies of water. I think the concept of a boat, I've always said, I've heard guys say, Noah didn't even know what a boat was. I'm like, I don't know about that. Pretty sure Noah had a concept of what a boat is, but this is a rather large boat. And so the interesting thing in this for you and I is think about that God simply told Noah, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want you to do. He was called of God to build an ark. How many of y'all know the size of the ark? I know we've got it in cubits. How much is a cubit? 18 inches. Basically, a biblical cubit is from the tip of a man's finger to his elbow. So this is a cubit. So 300 cubits. 450 feet. Okay. Yeah, it's 450 foot long, 75 foot wide, 45 foot tall. How long is 450 feet? Okay. So just for a point of reference, this building that we're sitting in, from this wall to that wall is 100 feet. 4.5 of these. This building is 60 foot wide, so add 15 foot to the other side. And these are, I think, 14 foot sidewalls, not 45 foot sidewalls. So the immensity of this project is mind-boggling when you think about, Noah, this is what I want you to do. In this section, immediately we learn 2 things about Noah. One, in verse 9, that he was a blameless and righteous man. Why? What made him blameless and what made him righteous? Was he without sin? Was he perfect? Was he? Because he walked with God. Exactly. Now there's another guy in Scripture, I don't know, this is Bible trivia, that says he walked with God. What was his name? Enoch. It says he was and then he was not because God took him. He walked with God. In this concept, we look at the anointing. Now, some of y'all may have had the experience of going to, is it in Ohio or Kentucky, wherever the ark is? Is it in Kentucky? And they built, Answers in Genesis built an exact replica size. Now, obviously, they don't have drawings, so they don't know the exact shape, but we have a pretty good idea. It was 40 foot high and had a window roof above it, and they know the size of it. And I don't know about you, but my mind wrestles with the simple things. And God leads me, and I believe that God does. I'm never going to discount someone saying that they heard God's voice. I don't discount that. because I'm not going to say what God will or won't do, but I've read God's word. God has spoken to me through the word. The Holy Spirit is impressed in my heart many different times. And I'm looking at Noah, understanding the world that he's living in with every neighbor he's got that is their mind is on evil continuously, and this is just what they're doing. This is the world he lives in. And God says, Noah, this is what I want you to do. Build an ark. Build this boat. And then I want you to take your family, and I want you to gather 2 of every kind of animal and all of the food they're going to need, and you store it all in this boat. And it's interesting to me that when you get to the end of this chapter in verse 22, with all of this description that we just read of what the enormity of this job that God has called Noah to do, and remember, no cranes, no chainsaw, I don't know. He may have had hammers and nails, but I don't know. I know for sure that he did not have a sawmill with a diesel-powered engine cutting these logs out. So think about the enormity of this project. And it says, Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him to do. What do you not see from Noah? Righteous Noah. He didn't question. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He didn't say, I think there's probably somebody else that's better skilled at this. I think somebody else might be better at that because I just don't really have that skill set. And so I look at this, and this is going to be a blunt, short word tonight. If Noah, given, and I just want to be really clear with you. I do not see this as an allegory. I believe this is a historical accurate, this is an event, a real thing that took place. And if Noah received the word from the Lord, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want you to do. And he goes, okay. And then he says, Jeff, I want you to go over and talk to your neighbor about Jesus. Oh, man, really? Jeff, I want you to go mow this widow's yard and weed eat it and paint her house. Paint her house. Come on, God. There's other people better skilled at that. I hate painting. I don't have time. Do you understand what I'm saying? The simplicity of things that God asked us to do in comparison to the call that he just placed on Noah. There's a reason that it says in verse 8 of chapter 6, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. There's a reason because he is known as a righteous man, because Noah walked every day with God. And he was willing when God said, do this. He did it. Now let's think about that. Where would you start? At the keel? Is that the front or the back? That's the thing that runs on the bottom. Okay. I mean, where would you start with a project like this? He says, go gather gopher wood. Okay. Okay, I can do that. How much? A lot. I can do that. I don't understand what you mean you're going to flood the earth. I don't know what this really means. You mean like you're going to cover the earth with water? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I believe you. Have you ever thought about the unbelievable thing that God just told Noah he was going to do from a human perspective? I mean, literally the reality of this project in itself. But I'm going to destroy all flesh. I'm going to flood the earth. Cover it with water. I'm going to cover it from the top of the mountains all the way. Nothing And Noah's taking this information in and going, okay. Okay. What have you and I been called to do? This is what Noah's calling is. We might as well pick a big one and lay it out here. Say, okay, what have we been called to do? Now, these are simple questions. No, what have we been called to do? Go into all nations and preach the gospel. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor. You know, the one that you need to go talk to and paint their house. What have we been, I mean, seriously, when you think about it, what have we been called to do? There's two sides to this story, too. Because we're not going to cover nearly all of it, but as you begin to read the story, it begins the building process. Now he's dealing with people, naysayers. And it says that he preached the entire time, telling people, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. I think that we misunderstand oftentimes what a call of God means. Do you? We use that term in the church today, and I dislike the term, that you're called into ministry. I think there is a calling to go into full-time ministry. That is a particular calling. I think there's also other callings, don't you? What would those be? Let's just lay some of them out here, see if we've heard them. We've covered the easies. Love the Lord your God. I've been called to love Jesus. Okay. Been called to make disciples, go into all nations. So does that mean that, we ought to like take 6 weeks vacation a year and go around the world preaching the gospel? Maybe. Or maybe it's talk to the people that God's brought to us. Give to missions. Support those. Be supported. What about just talking to the nations that God has brought to us? Isn't it interesting in our culture? Go to WT for a minute. How many different cultures are on campus? You've got various students from various countries in Asia. I don't even know the number. You've got students from the various regions and countries in Africa. You've got students from Central America, South America. You've got students from Europe that are here. And this is just a microcosm of the little town in Canyon, Texas that we live in, that there is an entire nations brought to us. And he said, you know what? Go to the nations. Does that mean I need to go to Europe or to Africa, or do I go to the people in my neighborhood that are from there? Think about it in that concept. Do I go to the nations? Yeah. And I preach Jesus. Well, what if they don't listen? Have you ever told anybody about Jesus and they just gave you a blank, dead, dumb stare? Or worse, accompanied with a few choice words and, yeah? Okay. So that means that we've done our duty, right? We can stop now. For all of the years that Noah worked on building this ark, he preached about the love of God and the judgment of God. How many people listened to him? How many times did he talk to his neighbor? I don't know. Do you think they came by going, no, what in the world are you doing? God's going to destroy the earth with water. I'm building the boat. You need to get ready to get in the boat. Noah's crazy. Noah's crazy. the point of this is that when God calls us to do something, as he did Noah, the majority of people are going to misunderstand it. They're not going to recognize it. They will probably scrutinize it. More than likely, they will reject it. But Noah faithfully continued. He gave him the instructions for this ark in order to escape the coming judgment. And he told him, you take your sons, their wives, and your wife, and go in. Why did God tell him up front who was going to be in the boat? Because God knew who wouldn't be in the boat. Nobody else. Thoughts on this little concept? Have you ever really just kind of sat and dwelt for a minute on the calling of Noah and the job at hand? Not just the physical job, not just the building of this boat, but the weight of it, knowing what was coming to the world. And then he says, and you shall bring 2 of every sort of every living thing of all flesh. Bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Now you have to gather up the animals. How did he get the animals? Noah was fast. I have a pretty good idea that God sent the animals to Noah. The mosquitoes just rode on the outside. Okay. Now. Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. Mm-hmm. The stockades that they were all in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, no. They just, when I knew we were going to be at this, I thought, how in the world, what, in an hour to dissect these 2 chapters and think about it. So I wanted to pick out the high points. First was the calling of Noah and his willingness to do it. No questions. Just do it. The second thing is the actual enormity of the project. The enormity of building all of the stuff that it would take to feed and house and to keep safe all of the animals. And this is just a side note. We look at the animal kingdom and we think, there is no way that he could have got 2 of every living animal in that boat. That's why God is very specific when he has the writer of Genesis, Moses, I think, write down, bring 2 of every what? Kind. Okay? So there weren't poodles and Australian shepherds and German shepherds. There were dogs. There weren't Herefords and Angus and Brangus and Brahma. Cows. Okay? Every kind. So not every species, every kind. How did we get all of the different species? Selective breeding within the kinds. That's how you end up with different species. That's how you get dogs this tall with a flat face. And you just keep doing the same thing. You think about the immensity of that. And then how much food are these animals going to need? A lot. And how many different kinds of feed? And like I said, well, you'd think, well, they're surrounded with water. They've got plenty of water. No, they have to haul water. Because we'll learn that the ark was sealed shut. So you wasn't going outside to get water. So when you think about the calling and God and Noah's willingness to just say yes, and then the enormity of the project in and of itself is unlike anything that God had asked anybody to do up until date. Correct? Oh, Jolene. What about dinosaurs? Or eggs? Yeah. Yeah, we have this picture of full-grown mature animals. Why? Why would you do that? Why not take two youngs? I would rather take two bottle calves than two fattening heifers or a bull and a cow, wouldn't you? I'd take two calves. I'd rather have a couple of puppies than a full-grown dog. It just makes sense. You just have to be logical and think about it. But you have to consider the number of the animals. 7 pairs of clean animals for the sacrifices that would take place afterwards. Think about the number. Now, I'm going to be realistic as I can because nobody is 100% certain. But if you do the very best at reading through the animals, the creeping things, the birds, most guys, and I've read several different writers and Bible scholars trying to round out how many animals were on there. And they're very uncertain. But somewhere, this guy, I was just going to tell you, this is how people try to figure it out. There were somewhere of different kinds, seems to be somewhere between 1,400 and 8,000 animals. That's a rather large gap. And if you multiply that by 2, there'd be 16,000 animals, and some were clean, and so there were bigger numbers, and so it could have been somewhere in the size of 30,000 animals. So that was the number, and this is, if I want to just say this, if you've never done it, go to Answers in Genesis. On their website, there is so much you can just read for days and days and days of the research and the calculations and the things that they've done. It's fantastic. But you take the size that they're saying that it is, 45 foot high, 75 foot wide, 450 foot long, and guys have said you take the average size of an animal of a sheep, so you're going to have some a little bit bigger like baby elephants, and you're going to have some a little bit smaller. 30,000 fits easily. Plus food, plus water. So, tight fit. And that is in and of itself an interesting concept of the calling and the job, the specifics of the job. And we kind of hit on that. And I'm not going to wear that out because you think about the callings that God's put on us and my willingness to argue with him, and no one ever did. Noah just went to work and he just started building an ark. I also believe with all of my heart that God gave him not only the plans but the capacity. Don't you? Even if Noah had never built anything, I think when God laid the plans down in Noah's feet and said, I want you to start building this, he also gave him the capacity to do it, the ability to do it. Which is also just a little side note that God will never call you to do something that he doesn't enable you to do. Even if you think you're not good at it, he gives you the capacity to do it. It's part of the gifting. It's part of the calling. The enabling comes with calling. Okay. Now, the second big event in this, we've read through this, and like I said, we could talk about this and just pick apart all kinds of stuff on it. I want to move on to chapter 7. We all have probably heard, watched enough movies, seen enough Bible stories, been to vacation Bible school, read about the ark and the enormity of that. But when you get into chapter 7, it says, remember in verse 22 of 6, Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. So he says, all right, got the ark built. He's completed it. Now, Noah, go into the ark and your family. Why? Yep. He told Noah to go in because I see that you are righteous before me in this generation. But hadn't he already said that he was righteous? What does this indicate? That over the period, what was it, over how many years it was that Noah built the ark, Noah maintained his righteousness? 120 years. He maintained his righteousness. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. And 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. It's going to rain 40 days. Side note, rain was a new concept. Like in the Panhandle. Yeah. Clean animals, when you go into the Leviticus, and it's further explained when you get into Leviticus what the clean animals, and they were the sacrificial animals. So it had to be an animal that chewed the cud and had a cloven hoof. So cows, goats, lambs. It was a specific, and doves, and there's a listing of clean animals, and they were for sacrifices. Okay? But he says, in 7 days I'm going to send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I've made I will blot out from the face of the earth, or face of the ground. He says, now this is why you built up the boat. This is what I'm going to do. And what does it say next in verse 5? And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. So what did he do? He built the boat. God said, go in the boat, take your family, and gather all the animals and take them in. What did he do? Okay. I gather all the animals. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. How old? Not 60, 600 years old. Apparently, we don't live as long as Noah. No. This was a cataclysmic event that forever would change the lifespan of animals and man. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives went with him into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. Pause. Noah and his family and all of the animals went into the ark when the flood came. But they were in there for 7 days. Just hanging out. Noah truly was a righteous man. I mean, think about it. This is unlike anything that God has ever asked me to do or ever even dreamed up for me to do. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 2nd month of the 7th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark, they and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was breath of life, and those that entered, male and female, all of the flesh, went in as God had commanded them. And what's the last line say in verse 16? And the Lord shut him in. When I think about that concept, God said, this is what I want you to do. He did it. And he said, now I want you to do this. And he did it. Now I want you to sit there for 7 days. And he did it. And then God shut the door. Now, I've heard lots of eloquent preaching over the years and teaching over the years. I actually heard a guy preach an entire sermon on what happened in the 7 days. I don't know where he got that. Was it 7 days that the door remained open for anybody that had heard the preaching for 120 years might have had an opportunity to get in the boat? Possibly. Was there any significance to the 7 days that they sat there before things started happening? Probably. And we can kick that around. It's fun discussing, but at the end of the day, what matters is that Noah was faithful to do that which God said, and so were his sons. That speaks volumes. And I want to bring that up because Lot was told that God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And he told his sons-in-law, and what did they do? They mocked him. Noah told his boys, this is what we're building. I'll bet you the boys worked on the boat. This is what we're building. Why? Because God said, okay. We're going to feed all these animals. Why? Because God said, okay. It's time to get in the boat. Why? Because God said, okay. And then God shut the door. Now, this goes to a statement that I've made before. Where's the safest place that you can be on earth? Think about this. What's the safest place that you can be on earth? In God's will. Doesn't have a location. Is Mexico City safer than Canyon, Texas? Depends on if you're in God's will there or not. We look at the world of safety and security based upon what we understand safety and security to be, but when God shuts the door on the ark, that's the safest place you can be. When God has put you in the middle of his will, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's the safest place you can be. So where were Noah and his family? Literally on the safest place on earth. Because they were in the boat, but more than that, because they were in the center of God's will. They were obedient. So if the safest place that you can be on earth is in God's will, where's the most dangerous place you can be? Out of God's will. And the location there again is irrelevant, right? You can be in the safest town and the safest school or at the safest job with the safest neighbors and be in the most dangerous place you've ever been in your life if you're out of the will of God. So they entered in, and God shut the door. Noah didn't shut the door. God did. And God sealed him in. Now, there's a lot of interesting things about the rains. There again, I said it had never rained because previously the earth was under the firmament, and it was like a big greenhouse, so there was no need. There was dew of a morning. There was no need for rain, but now God sent rain. And it says something also interesting, and I was reading a deal about that, and then I watched a podcast on it, actually, this 2 weeks ago. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the seventh day of the month, and on the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. We understand rain because like 2 or 3 times a year we see it. And usually we get a lot. And when we do, does it flood here? When was it that, half of Amarillo was underwater for a month? Over what, 6 inches? So you think about that. We understand the concepts of 40 straight days of rain, 40 solid days of rain. Global rain, not just local rain, global rain. But here's the thing that I was listening to on the podcast the other day that was fascinating. Everybody's always said, well, where did all of the water recede to? And God tells us, the fountains of the great deep were broken up, They have recently, within, I don't know how many, the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and Caleb may know more specifics about this, they found the oceans under the crust of the earth that are larger than the oceans on the surface of the earth. Nobody knew they were there. There's more water under the crust of the earth than there is on the surface of the earth. What does that sound like? Fountains of the great deep. And God opened them up. And so you had water falling out of the sky and water coming up out of the ground for 40 days. And so the flood of Noah, there's been a lot of debate. There's a lot of naysayers that say it was a localized flood only in the area of the Middle East. No, it was a global flood. If the entire Earth's surface is inundated with rain for 40 days and all of the water under the crust of the earth is seeping up to the top of the ground for 40 solid days, what does it do? It fills the earth with water. When you get to verse 15, it says, then they went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, which was there was the breath of life, and those that entered, male and female, went as God had commanded, and the Lord shut them in. The flood continued for 40 days on the earth. Waters increased and bore up the ark. And as it rose high above the earth, the waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all of the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. What's the tallest mountain on the earth? Mount Everest. It was underwater. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits. How deep under the water were the mountains? 15 cubits. Somebody that's good at math, tell me how many feet that is. 20? 22 feet. Thanks, Rob. I married a math teacher, so I don't have to do stuff like that. 20 foot of water above the highest mountain. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left and those who were with him in the ark, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. So this gives us a picture of what's really happening on the earth during the flood of Noah. And I've been all over, I've been blessed to travel all over the mountains out west. I've been way down in Mexico in the mountains. Seen a lot of different places. I have not really been anywhere other than that. I went over to Canada for breakfast one day. But anywhere you go, the geological and topographical things that you see, when you think about all of that being underwater, and where did the weird mountain ranges and the rock layers that are laying on edge and all, how did all of that happen? What's the greatest pressure on Earth? Hydraulic pressure. There's nothing stronger than hydraulic pressure. Hydraulic pressure is just, well, if you use hydraulics, you're just compressing fluid till it pushes whatever the ram on whatever cylinder or whatever it is, hydraulic pressure. Can you imagine the hydraulic pressure on the earth when there's 22 foot of water above the highest mountain on the surface of the earth? How much is the hydraulic pressure pushing down on the surface of the earth? Would it be enough hydraulic pressure to turn sand into stone? Would it be enough hydraulic pressure to take all of the remains of all of the animals that died on the earth, deposit them in the lower places where everything runs into a flood, and then cover them and hydraulically compress them and squeeze the oil out of them? Yeah, it would. So everything that we see, God is explaining in two and a half chapters. And then you get to chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, so she returned to him into the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him any more. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. Noah woke up to a new world when he opened the door. Everything was changed. No one was there. The animals were dispersed. All of the evil and the sin of the world was gone. It's just him and his family. Can you imagine the traumatic experience? You ever been to a devastated place after a tornado? Went somewhere where there was a flood, and you stand there and you're just, the devastation's ridiculous. You're looking and everything is just changed. The river that I go fish every year that I grew up on in Missouri, about 6 years ago, there was a major flood. And my first year up there after the flood, every fishing hole that I ever knew was gone, and there were new fishing holes. And the river had relocated itself in 3 different places. It was just, everything was different. Trees were gone, and new, it's just different. Noah opens up to the world that he knew is no more. Now there's a new world. And what does he do? I want us to jump down to verse 20, and then we're going to close out. After this experience, let's just pause. After this experience from the first day of calling that I want you to build an ark, through the 120 years of construction, to the 7 days of waiting, to the 40 days of rain, the 120 days on the ark, to the 7 days that they wait, 7 more days, they finally come out. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. What was the first thing that Noah did? He worshiped God. Even when the world he knew had been completely taken away and changed, what did he do? He worshiped God. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intentions of man's heart is on evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Noah worshiped God after the most traumatic experience of his life. He was righteous in the beginning. He was righteous in the middle. And when the flood subsided and he came out of the ark and he released the animals, the first thing he did was worship God. It's a testimony to me that, and I'm going to jump off and sound really superficial. I have a bad day and I get irritated and I don't even take time to pray and thank God for the day I had. Seriously. You know? He asked me to do some simplistic thing like I said, like help my neighbor mow his yard or something. And I get irritated instead of worshiping him for the opportunity, saying thank you. Noah did not know what the world would hold, but he knew that God held the world. And so he worshiped. And so for you and I tonight, I knew when we were reading this, this is a story that we're all very familiar with. But until you do a deep dive and think for just a moment, the righteousness of a man to do the impossible and never question God why. What should we do? Man, we've been given all the tools. We've been given the Word of God. We've been given the presence of the Holy Spirit. We've been given the body of Christ in the church. We've been given marching orders to go and do. What should we do? If Noah can build an ark, I can tell my neighbor about Jesus. I mean, seriously, right? So, thoughts or comments on this, guys? I know we're running out of time. When I opened up the chapters they wanted us to cover, I went, "You're got to be kidding! There is no way we can do this in an hour." But God commanded Noah and his family and all the creatures to go forth and replenish the earth, and here we are. So just in case you wanted to know, because of Grandpa Noah, you and I are kin. Because all of us come back to Noah, a righteous man who obeyed God. Thoughts or comments? That's why we call each other brother. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We also live under a promise. And that promise is that I won't do this again. I'm not going to flood the earth with water again. And I'm going to give you a reminder of that covenant, that promise, and it's a rainbow. And we need to be mindful whenever we see one, instead of going, "Oh, that's cool," go, "Thank you, God, for your grace." That's the pot of gold, is the grace of God at the end of the rainbow. Yeah, good way to look at it. Okay. Anybody else have a comment on this? If not, I'll wrap it up. This is good discussion to have over coffee with somebody sometime. Don't you think? Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Remember, next week we're having dinner, something. So bring something that goes with something, except corn dogs or Spam. Don't do that. Next Sunday, be sure and invite your friends and neighbors and make your way out to the Sad Monkey Mercantile. It's going to be a fun time. This Sunday, this coming Sunday. Is that what I said? Is this Sunday the next Sunday? Thanks, Jeb. All right. Man, it's been good to be here. I appreciate y'all so much. And then, like I said, we got new books. We're going to continue in Genesis for the next quarter. So if you need a book, see Glenn or Ben. All right. I called you Glenn. I don't know why. Anyway, I am so glad to have our brother Kurt and them back from the East Coast. I was afraid that they